Welcome to Unbound, the podcast with Beth Curry, author, storyteller, and survivor. This is where books meet real life, where Beth reads chapters from her work and breaks free from the traditional audiobook format, diving deeper into the personal experiences, lessons, and liberation behind every page. Nothing is off limits. Let's get unbound.
Hey there, welcome to Unbound Off Script. I'm Beth Curry. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're not, welcome back. I call these off script episodes because I'm not reading from my books. I'm not reading at all. What I say during these episodes is just kind of the nonsense floating around in my brain, and I spit it out. But I will tell you that I do have notes scratched down. And the main reason for that is I don't want to speak from a place of ignorance or just opinion. I do like to speak facts, and I've been educated in life, but I also have access to a lot of resources, both online and most importantly, offline, where I can do real research that kind of backs those facts up and doesn't just feed me whatever it's been fed into it, right? So I do have notes for that reason. And I also have notes to keep a rational and reasonable flow here, because otherwise I could just be going on a tirade and speak for hours on end, because for some reason I've learned in the last several months, it turns out I do like to talk, but only when I'm alone or with just one other person or guest in this setting, because when I'm with people, I still do prefer to be a listener. Now, having said all that, I want to challenge you to listen to this, okay? Challenge your cognitive dissonance and bias. I challenge you to sit through this entire episode, even though it might be long, even if you disagree, and even if it makes you uncomfortable, especially if it makes you uncomfortable, because we need to be made uncomfortable to escape our narrow-mindedness. And we need to be able to open up the door again to each other, to humanity and to the realness that makes every single one of us a good person. We need to be able to have dialogue again, because what's happening in the world right now isn't it. And I don't accept that. And I'm, perfectly fine with the people I choose to be around, because I've set boundaries and made conscious choices, and I'm protecting my peace. And I've talked about this before. I'm very careful about when and how I interact with other people who still expect me to be in their space in some capacity, because of all of this. I have some very specific people in mind who I know need to hear this episode. And I also know that they're not going to bother. That shocks me, but it doesn't shock me anymore, if that makes sense. And you know what? Maybe I'll be wrong. And as I've said before, if I'm wrong about something, I will come back here and retract my statements, because I'm trying to do better at living with integrity. And I believe in practicing radical accountability. But, I am navigating the real world pain of watching people I care about, or used to care about, stay stuck. So if you're a regular, you've heard me say this a lot, but I've been getting a lot of messages lately from these regulars. A lot of you have been asking me, Beth, why do you think social media is such a cesspool? And honestly, that question, I think, inspired this entire episode. Okay. So here's the thing about me. I don't often participate in the chaos. I used to, but not anymore. I'm not out there getting into arguments in comment sections or quote tweeting people or any of that, because I don't want to, but I observe obsessively, because I am fascinated, borderline obsessed probably, with human behavior and psychology. And social media is like the world's largest behavioral psychology lab. And I can't look away. I really can't look away. And what I've been observing lately, it's concerning, like genuinely concerning. And I'm not just talking about people I know. I'm talking about basically anyone who I can see out there, I actually do have an episode coming up on a Saturday off script that's going to touch on some of this as well. So watch for that. But carrying on with today, I'm going to try to be real with you. I think we are living through something genuinely troubling. And I don't mean that in a clickbait, the world is ending kind of way, right? I mean it in a psychological shift kind of way, a how we process information has fundamentally changed kind of way. We are no longer running on facts. That's long gone. We are running on feelings. And before you roll your eyes and think, oh, great, another person complaining about these days, hear me out, okay? Because this isn't about politics, or at least it's not just about politics. It's about something a lot deeper, like way deeper. If you're already uncomfortable, you really do need to stay with me here, okay? It's a challenge. It's my challenge for you. Stay with me. Please stay with me. Let me ask you something, okay? When's the last time you changed your mind about something important? Like really changed your mind? Not just learned a new fact, but actually shifted your your perspective or position. That's what I'm trying to say. Words are hard. You actually shifted your position or your perspective on something you felt strongly about. Yeah, it's hard, right? And this is a thing that's keeps me occupied in this space of thinking. I've been watching brilliant people, and I mean genuinely smart, educated, accomplished people become absolutely convinced of things that are like verifiably, absolutely not true, or at minimum, way more complicated than they're making them out to be. And they are repeating these things with a very scary looking conviction. And I'm not just talking about the other side. That's the easy part, right? Like it's so easy to look at people we disagree with and think, wow, they've really lost the plot. But I'm talking about people on every side, including mine. People I agree with, people I respect, people who in any other context would tell you how important critical thinking is. And you know what? Even me, like I don't let my ego get in the way anymore. If I'm challenged, I will take a step back and I will look within and I will openly and freely admit when I'm wrong, or I will rationally approach a conversation, just as I believe we all should be doing. But back to that critical thinking thing, that's become kind of a dark joke for me lately. Like everyone, and I mean everyone, thinks they're the critical thinker. How is this even possible? I do my research, they say. I don't just believe everything I read, they say. And you know what? I say that. I say these things. Meanwhile, they're sharing something from a source that's, let's just say, questionable at best. So what's happening from a psychological perspective here? We're experiencing something called motivated reasoning on steroids. It's not a new concept. We've always been prone to seeking out information that confirms what we already believe, right? But social media has turned this tendency into a full-blown crisis. Kids, seriously, like think about how information used to work, okay? You'd read an article in a newspaper. You'd see a story on the evening news. Was it perfect? No. Was there bias? Of course. But there was at least some gatekeeping, some editorial process and some attempt at verification. Now you see a headline, or worse, you see a screenshot of a headline, or even worse, you see someone's interpretation of a headline. And in the 3 seconds you spend looking at it while scrolling, your brain makes a judgment. Does this align with what I already think? If yes, boom, share, retweet, repost, send it to the family group chat. Context? What's context? Who has time for context? And here's where it gets really interesting from a psych perspective as well. Once you've shared something, you've got skin in the game. You've publicly aligned yourself with that information. So when someone comes along and says, hey, that's not quite accurate, or this is missing some important context, your brain doesn't go, oh, interesting, let me reconsider. Your brain goes into defense mode because now it's not about the information anymore. It's about you, your judgment, your identity. We've turned the facts into identity markers. And when facts become part of your identity, you can't change your mind about, or you can't change your mind without feeling like you're betraying yourself, right? Make sense? And here's where it gets even more interesting and infuriating, at least to me. Let's talk about what happens when you actually try to bring context or facts into one of these situations. So picture this, okay? Someone shares something. It's inflammatory, it's emotional, it gets a lot of engagement, and you notice it's missing crucial context, or it's actually not quite accurate, or it's been taken out of context entirely. So you respond politely and calmly with additional information. Maybe you provide a source. Maybe you just add context that changes the picture. What happens next? Do they say, oh, interesting, let me look into that? Do they thank you for the additional information? No, they do not. What happens is you get brushed off, you get argued with, you get called names, because how dare you challenge their post with your facts and your context? The psychology of it, they've already shared it. They've already put themselves out there publicly. They've gotten their likes, their comments, their shares, the dopamine hit, right? And now you're coming along threatening that, and you're making them look bad. And you're suggesting they didn't think it through. So instead of reconsidering, they double down and they get defensive and they deflect. I've seen this play out hundreds of times. The person who impulsively shared something without checking it, when confronted with the facts that contradict it, suddenly becomes angry at the facts, at you, for bringing them. It becomes about tone policing. Well, you didn't have to be so condescending, even when you weren't. Or it becomes about your motives. Why are you defending them? Or it just becomes straight up name calling. Nate shared a quote with me back during the pandemic when everyone was fighting, and it really stuck with me. And it's, insults are the final redoubt of those who have no facts. And I've kept that in my brain. I haven't repeated it, but I've used that when I've watched, just for thinking in my own brain. When I've watched people who immediately fly into name calling about something political that someone said on a post about a banana bread recipe. It's wild. And something else that I find happening too is that people have their backs up. They're just so defensive that when you make a statement at all, you're just having a dialogue with someone, you're trying to have a conversation with someone on social media, and they attack you right out of the gate. And you have to say to them, dude, I was just having a dialogue. I'm just participating in this conversation. And it's such neutral stuff that you say, but they're so defensive and they have their backs up. And it's crazy. And here's my absolute favorite. I say favorite sarcastically, but it makes my brain want to explode. It's the person who tells you implicitly or explicitly that they have evidence for something. They know it's true. They've seen the proof, the videos, whatever. They have the receipts. I saw this play out real friggin' hard in September of 2025. So you say, okay, I genuinely want to understand this because I do. Can you share what you're referring to? I'd really like to see it because I would. And suddenly, crickets. Or worse, it's not my job to educate you. Do your own research. Google is your friend. I'm not going to spoon feed you information. Okay, but here's the thing, champ. I have done my own research. I have searched for what you're telling me is out there. I can't find what you're talking about. So if you have it, as you say that you do, and you've seen it, why not just share it with me? We're having a conversation. You made a claim. I'm asking you to back it up. That's how discussions work, guys. But no, instead you get deflection. You get condescension. If you can't find it, you're not looking hard enough. Or my personal favorite, I don't owe you anything, which, fine, you don't owe me anything. But then don't make the claim in the first place, okay? Don't tell me you have evidence and then refuse to provide it. Now, I know I've just pissed off a few of you, but please stay with me here, okay? You know what this tells me? 9 times out of 10, it means the person doesn't actually have what they claim to have. They either saw someone else say it existed, or they heard it referenced somewhere and assumed it was real, or they're misremembering something they think they saw. But they are lying because they probably didn't see it, and they definitely do not have it, and they don't know where to find it because it doesn't exist. But they can't admit that because admitting I don't actually have that, or maybe I was wrong about that, would mean admitting they spoke without knowing. And in our current climate, that's apparently worse than just making stuff up and then getting hostile when questioned about it. So yeah, they deflect and they make it about you. And they make it about your inability to find it and your bias and your motives. And when you keep pushing politely, genuinely trying to understand, that's when the name calling starts, right? You're a sheep, you're brainwashed, you're part of the problem, you're too stupid to see the truth. Whatever, insert whatever here. All because you asked for evidence of a claim they made. And I'm watching all of this, right? Just observing and taking mental notes like the psychology nerd that I am. And what strikes me is how predictable it all is. The pattern is always the same. Make claim, get challenged, get defensive, deflect, attack the challenger. It's like clockwork, and it happens across the political spectrum, across different topics. Like I said, banana bread recipes, what in the hell? Why is anyone even making that political to begin with? But, sometimes someone gets mad about an ingredient. It's insane. But across different types of people, smart people, educated people, people who in any other context would tell you how much they value evidence and rational discourse. But when it's their claim being questioned, all that goes out the window. And this is what we've lost. We've lost the ability to hold complexity, right? Everything has to be simple now, good or bad, right or wrong, with us or against us. I had someone just recently tell me they thought I leaned a certain way politically because I was so outspoken about the other side. They just assumed that about me. By the way, I'm pretty outspoken about all government, everything. But they just assumed that about me and probably looked at everything I ever said or did under that microscope. But I don't know, like maybe have a conversation with me and learn where I really stand. Maybe don't take some things I said 6 years ago when you labeled me a conspiracy theorist and those things actually ended up coming true and being real, and just assume I still wear a tinfoil hat despite the fact that I joke about it now because, self-deprecating humor has always been my bag, baby. Have a conversation with me. And don't just have a conversation with me, listen to me. Okay? Listen to what I say and watch what I do and how I behave because I have integrity. There will not be a conflict between who I am online and who I am offline. And I see that a lot in people too. People are performing online. Or they're performing in real life, which is even scarier to me. But I really desperately want to see some consistency between the two. Anyway, went off on a tirade again. This very simplistic, black or white, red or blue, no nuance, no complexity. The real world, it's complicated, okay? Most things worth discussing don't fit neatly into a tweet or a meme or a 60-second video. They require nuance and they require sitting with discomfort and they require admitting that maybe you don't have the full picture. And before anyone thinks I'm putting myself above all this, I'm not. I catch myself doing this too. I will see something that makes me angry and I'll feel that impulse to share it immediately because it feels true, right? Or maybe it aligns with my worldview or confirms my suspicions. But I've learned, and I'm still learning, to pause and to ask, where is this coming from? What's the source? What's the context I'm missing? And you know what? I actually look for it, even if it makes me uncomfortable. I dig for truth. I beg for truth. Maybe it's because I spent a good chunk of my life lying to protect people I loved and protect myself. I don't know. But you hear me and you have heard me and you will hear me in season 3 admitting everything. Okay. So putting my ego aside, putting my shame that I carried for decades aside because I seek truth. Ramble again. I also think what would someone who disagrees with me say about this, right? And most importantly, am I sharing this because it's true or because it makes me feel vindicated? That last one, ooh, that's a hard one. Okay, so let's talk about integrity for a minute because this is where things can get really uncomfortable too. I've been thinking a lot about the gap between who we say we are and who we actually are, especially online, just as I alluded to. And I also have an episode coming up about integrity as well, where I dig a bit deeper into that idea. But social media has given us the ability to curate these versions of ourselves. And look, I get it. We all want to present our best selves, of course. That's human nature. But somewhere along the way, a lot of us, and again, I'm including myself in this, started believing in our own PR, right? My professional side, my author side, my podcast side uses graphics and images that are heavily filtered. People think I don't have wrinkles. Dudes, I'm 50. I've got wrinkles. I'm an old hag. I've got smile lines that I'm proud of. I've got scars and I've got uneven, blotchy skin because of friggin' menopause bullshit. I own this. I admit this. But I also see people online who post constantly about kindness and compassion and open-mindedness. Their bios are full of inspirational quotes, biblical quotes. They share infographics about mental health and empathy and understanding different perspectives and all that. And then you meet them in real life, or you watch how they interact in the comments, or you see how they treat someone who disagrees with them, or maybe you even see another post they've made that completely contradicts what they just said. And it's not any of that at all. And of course, complexity can happen here as well. They might be a very lovely person offline and they might portray themselves as lovely online, but you can still see an overlap between the two. Or something in there just doesn't add up, You literally are observing two different people and it's a wild trip in the brain, I've got to say. The person who posts about the importance of listening interrupts everyone and talks over people constantly. Or maybe the person who shares content about having difficult conversations. They block anyone who challenges them. And this is the one that I see a lot with some family members and some friends. The person who preaches tolerance and understanding is viciously intolerant of anyone outside their ideological bubble. And they prove it from one post to another. What a trip that is to observe too. And here's the thing that really gets me. Honestly, please listen to this. I don't think most of these people are intentionally being hypocritical, okay? I genuinely believe they don't see the disconnect. This is where my frustration comes in because I hate seeing people like this. I really do. They've created this online identity they've started to believe is real, even when their actual behavior tells a different story. But it's not even online, because I can see someone who talks, say, the Christianity game offline and that whole acceptance and tolerance thing, but it's completely intolerable when it comes to even questioning something about someone because they're so blind in their dislike for this person. Like, I'm sorry, but I was brought up with that whole do unto others thing, try to keep hate out of our hearts. And one of the later episodes in season 3, you will hear something that some of my limited print run readers who got access to my book early were absolutely shocked by when they read it. They were shocked about how I handled a situation 10 years ago, something that was incredibly painful and difficult for me. But it was how I was brought up and what my life experiences and my personal beliefs told me to do. It felt right in my heart, and it still does. And it actually changed me and my life at the time. But still, it's like we've all kind of become unreliable narrators in our own lives, right? There is a term in psychology I've talked about frequently, cognitive dissonance, right? That explains part of this. It's that uncomfortable feeling that you get when your actions don't align with your beliefs. Most people, instead of changing their actions, will actually change their perception of reality to reduce that discomfort. Weird, eh? So if I believe I'm an open-minded person, but I only consume media from sources I already agree with, and I block or dismiss anyone who challenges me, I don't think, maybe I'm not as open-minded as I think. I think, well, those people aren't worth engaging with. They're the closed-minded ones. Like, see how that works? Stay with me. I know you're mad. Stay mad, but stay with me. Please keep listening. A challenge. Keep listening. It's wild though, right? Like, we're walking around thinking we're the good guys in the story, and we're all convinced that we're the ones who see clearly while everyone else is deluded. But what worries me most, I think we're losing our grip on what words even mean anymore, right? Critical thinking doesn't mean thinking critically. You know what it means now? Agrees with me. Do your research doesn't mean actual research. It means find sources that confirm what I already believe. That whole confirmation bias thing, right? Have an open mind doesn't mean being open. It means agree with my perspective. We've taken these concepts that used to mean something and we've hollowed them out. They're just like tribal markers now, ways of signaling which team we're on. And you know what I think is really going on here? I think we're scared. We're living in a time of massive change and uncertainty. Information is coming at us from every direction. We don't know who to trust, and institutions we used to rely on have lost credibility, sometimes for good reasons, sometimes not. The future feels unstable. When people are scared, they cling to certainty, right? Even false certainty is better than the discomfort of not knowing. So we find our tribe, and we find our sources, and we find our truth, and we hold on to it with both hands for dear life, because letting go means falling into that uncertainty, and that's terrifying. I get it. I really, really do. But what I want to say, and this is really why I wanted to do this episode, we have to find a way to be okay with not knowing. And we have to rebuild our tolerance for ambiguity, okay? For complexity, for I'm not sure. We have to realize something that I've realized long ago, and that's that we are allowed to say, I don't know. We don't have to have all the answers, despite the fact that we are told all the information is out there. All the information that's out there is not accurate. We're at a point where we can't even trust what we see with our own eyes and hear with our ears. But we need to get back to this place, because the alternative is what we're seeing right now. A world where everyone is absolutely certain that they're right and everyone else is wrong. And facts are whatever we want them to be. Where we can't have conversations anymore. We only have confrontations. So what do we do about this? I've been thinking about this a lot, and I don't have all the answers. See what I did there? But I have some thoughts. So first, pause before you share. I know it's simple, but it's powerful. So before you hit the share button, ask yourself, do I actually know this is true? Have I read beyond the headline? What's the source? What context might I be missing? Or, as I've actually done on my own social media, be the person where the share dies. Don't share it at all. My social media is mine, and it's about me. It's not about what happened there or over there. It's not about how distracted I am with another country when my own country is collapsing. It's not about any of that. It's about me and my family and the men in my life who I love and my cats and maybe my books or whatever. It's me, 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 me. So there. Second, diversify your information diet. And I don't just mean reading resources you disagree with, though that helps. I mean, varying the types of sources you consume. Long form journalism, books, academic papers. Remember these things, right? Conversations with actual humans who aren't performing for an audience. Speak to an actual human face to face. I know some of you are out there plugging in an AI response into your comments because you haven't quite figured out where you stand on the subject you're being challenged on, or you're arguing, or you're calling someone names. But if that person was standing right in front of you, you couldn't and wouldn't do that. We need to stop hiding behind our screens and start interacting with human beings. Third, you want to practice changing your mind about small things. This is like exercise for your brain. Find little things you believe and actively look for good counter arguments. Get comfortable with the feeling of uncertainty, because if you can't change your mind about small things, you definitely can't change it about big things. I do this all the time. I highly recommend it. It does strengthen you. And it allows you to actually feel confident in what you're saying so that you can respond to somebody without distractions or name calling or needing somebody or something else to write your response, right? You can own your words. You can say them confidently. Fourth, you want to check yourself on the integrity piece. Are you practicing what you preach? Are you the same person online as you are offline? These things that you can say or type out on the screen and send to somebody, do you have the confidence to look that person in the eyes and say the same things? Are you treating people the way you say people should be treated? Are you open-minded in the way you claim to value? And if not, and this is very important, can you admit that? Can you say, I'm working on this, instead of pretending you've already got it figured out? And fifth, maybe most importantly, give yourself and others some grace. I talk about grace a lot too. We're all stumbling through this shit together. We're all products of this system that's designed to make us reactive and tribal and certain. And recognizing that doesn't excuse the behavior, but it does help us understand it. I'm not saying we should accept misinformation or stop calling out hypocrisy at all. I'm saying that we should do it with the recognition that we're all capable of being the person who falls for it, right? We're all capable of being the hypocrite. Intellectual humility isn't weakness. It's the strongest position you can take right now. I promise. Look, I know this has been kind of a heavy episode, and I know I've probably said some things that made you uncomfortable. Maybe you're even feeling a little defensive right now. Maybe you hate me. I don't know. If you are, though, I'd encourage you to sit with that feeling for a minute and ask yourself why. And if you want to take it a step further, come and join our Facebook group. Let's have a discussion there, an actual discussion between humans. It's a private group, so it hasn't yet been infiltrated by the algorithmic bots. And listen, for that episode coming up, the goal here isn't to make anyone feel bad. The goal is to wake us up a little bit, to remind us that we're all in danger of becoming the thing we criticize in others. We can do better than this. We can. We're smarter than this. But it does require effort, and it requires honesty, and it requires being willing to look at ourselves as clearly as we look at everyone else. Okay? So here's my challenge to you. This week, find one thing you believe strongly and go looking for the best arguments against it. Not the straw man arguments, not the dumbest takes from the other side, right? The best arguments, the best ones, the smartest people who disagree with you. Read them, listen to them. You don't have to change your mind, but you have to genuinely engage with the possibility that you might be missing something. And if you catch yourself sharing something on social media this week, stop. Read the whole thing, check the source, think about context, and then decide if it's really worth putting out into the world. We're all contributing to the information ecosystem, right? We can either make it better or we can make it worse. And that choice, in the end, it's ours. That's it for this off-script episode of Unbound. Thanks for sticking with me through that. Sometimes you just gotta work through the thoughts out loud, right? If this resonated with you or if it pissed you off, honestly, I want to hear about it. Seriously, tell me why I pissed you off. Tell me what triggered or what got you triggered. in you when you heard some of the things I said. Tell me how it made you feel. Tell me where you felt that feeling. Was it in your throat? Was it in your fists? Was it in your stomach? I want to know, because I love psychology and I love to know the types of reactions that I can elicit in people. But maybe send me a thoughtful message instead of just reacting, yeah? Contact info's in the show notes. Please take care of yourselves and, I don't know, maybe take care of the truth too. I'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Unbound with Beth Curry. Join the conversation in the Facebook group or visit author.bethcurry.com. Want to support the show? Head to ko-fi.com/unbound podcast. Until next time, stay unbound.